So growing up, one of my favorite nights of the week was Monday night because on Monday night, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was on TV. Any 90s kids grow up watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Yeah. This is a story all about how my life got twisted. I won't go any further. That's all I'll give you. Yeah. You could sing it. I know you could. Yeah. Sometimes I'm driving in my car and it randomly pops in my head. That was the theme song to the show for those who you didn't know what that was. I love that show. It's a story of a young guy named Will who lives in Philadelphia. He gets into some trouble, gets mixed in with the wrong crowd, so his mom ships him off to California, to Bel Air, California, to live with his rich aunt and uncle. In one of those episodes in season 4, his dad comes to visit. So he grew up without a dad, long time without a dad. And his dad comes to visit, and he's elated. He's over the moon. He's excited. His dad says, hey, we're going to make up for lost time. I'm going to rekindle a relationship with you. He gives all of these promises to his son. And then he says to him, hey, let's plan a trip. Let's get away together and go have some adventures. And Will is all excited about that. And so it comes to the end of this episode, and you come to realize that his dad, named Lou, actually isn't there to reconnect with his son, Will. He's just trying to get some money from the rich aunt and uncle. And when it comes time to leave to go on this trip together, he makes up this excuse, and he says to Will, actually, I can't come. I can't do it. Something came up. Some work stuff came up, and I've got to go. We'll reconnect next week. We'll replan the trip. And then he walks out of the room. And initially, Will's response is like, hey, it's okay. I'm all right. You could tell he's like protecting his emotions. He's protecting his heart. He's saying, it's okay. It's no big deal. And his uncle, Phil, is there, and they're having this conversation. And then his emotion starts to surge. And he starts to say, I had 15 or 14 birthdays without this guy. He never was around. I don't need him. I learned all of this stuff on my own. I learned how to play basketball on my own. I learned how to drive on my own. I had my first date without him. I learned how to shave without him. And then someday I'm going to go and I'm going to finish college. I'm going to get a good job. I'm going to be a husband. I'm going to have kids of my own, and I'm going to be a better father than he ever was to me. And he's getting cranked up, and he's getting more emotional, and he's getting angry, and it's all this coming out. And then he just stops, and then he breaks, and he starts to cry. And he says, why doesn't he want me? And just falls into his uncle's arms and starts to sob. For it being a very goofy, funny, comedic show, it's one of the more powerful scenes in 90s sitcom television. I mean, it will bring an ache in your soul and maybe even make you cry. Why doesn't he want me? I told this story at a men's retreat that I was speaking at last year, and after that session, I had a line of guys wanting to talk to me, to tell me about the broken relationships that they have with their dad. One of those guys was Bob. Bob was 74 years old, and he came up to me and he said, while I was in middle school and high school growing up in my home, my dad regularly called me stupid. Now, Bob was not stupid. Bob graduated high school with honors, went on to get a college degree, a master's degree, and even for a time worked for NASA. But he carried that identity of being stupid for a long, long time. He said to me, I had to do lots of work to forgive my dad and actually put that identity behind me and embrace the true identity that I have as a child of God. And as he was telling this story, he said a couple of times, I'm not stupid. And it was almost as though he was saying that to himself as a reminder to himself of that's not who he was. And during this brief 90-second conversation, he even got teary-eyed. At 74 years old, having already forgiven his dad, that wound still exists. And many people have broken relationships with their fathers. Many people have high expectations of what they wish their relationship with their dad could be. But for many people, it just never comes to materialize. And there's all of these stats out there about, hey, when you have a present father figure in the home, here's the success that a child could have. And without that, there's a lot of things that might come their way. And this time of year just tends to accentuate those desires that people have and some of that unmet longing for that relationship that's supposed to be one of the most intimate, safe relationships anybody will have. And so this season can be filled with heartache and pain because of that. But at the same time, if we have eyes to see and ears to hear, there can be some comfort and some hope in the midst of it. Because like what Luke shared earlier, we have an everlasting heavenly Father who is always present with us, who will never leave us nor forsake us. And we have this verse in Isaiah 9:6 that reminds us that in a season that might be filled with mixed emotions, there is hope, because we read in Isaiah 9:6, "For to us a child is born, a son is given, and the government shall be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." And each week we've been looking at one of these 4 names to see how Jesus fulfills this identity of who God is. And this week we're looking at Everlasting Father. Now, of the 4 names given to Jesus, I would say Everlasting Father is probably the one that causes people the most to say, wait a minute, like, how does that work out? Like, how is Jesus our Everlasting Father? Because we often associate Jesus with a member of the Trinity. And within the context of the Trinity, you have God the Father, you have God the Son, who is Jesus, and then God the Holy Spirit. So how is Jesus our everlasting Father if within the Godhead, he's the Son? Now, within this Isaiah passage, I don't think Isaiah is referencing the Trinity in this passage. What he's doing is he's giving a royal announcement. He's talking about a new king that will be born for the nation of Israel. And in the ancient Jewish world, sometimes kings were referenced to be fathers for the nation. And so here you have this new king who will be a better father for the nation in his royal role as king over his people. But within the scope of the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, what Jesus does for us is he reveals the Father to us, both in the way he acts on earth, the way that he operates, the people he engages with, how he treats people, but also in his teaching, in what he proclaims, in the message that he brings, what he is heralding. He also reveals the Father in that. And in one of the ways, one of his common strategies for teaching was storytelling, parables. And one of his parables in Luke 15 maybe is one of the most well-known stories that Jesus tells to reveal the Father to us. So we start in Luke 15, verse 11. This is what we read. Jesus continued. So he's in the middle of teaching already. And he says, "There was a man who had 2 sons," i.e., he was a father. "And the younger son said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.'" Now, people often approach this story and they give the majority of the focus of their attention to this younger son. We're told that this father has 2 sons, but most of the focus is given to this younger son, mostly because of the extreme nature of his request. What is he asking for? He's basically asking for his inheritance. And when does he want it? Now. I want my share of the inheritance now. Now, the thing about inheritance is, when do you usually collect your inheritance? It's once your parents are gone, once they have passed. So basically, what this son is saying to his father is, hey, you mean nothing to me. You are purely a means to an end. We know, both of us, we know that I'm just hanging around here until you die. So how about we stop playing this little game that we're playing and you just give me my cut of the money now and I can be on my way. I mean, that's basically what he's saying. The people listening to this story would have heard that loud and clear. Now, if I am the father in this story, and my son comes to me, says, hey, I would like my inheritance early, you're dead to me, I would be like, excuse me? What did you say? Who do you think you are. You want whose money? Newsflash for you. It's my money. I will decide who gets it, when they get it, and how much. What you can do right now is get your hind parts back out into the field and get to work. You'll be lucky if you get a dime of my money. If I'm the father, that's how I would respond. And the people listening to this story probably would be thinking, yeah, I respond that way too. Because in the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy 21, there's actually provision to publicly discipline a rebellious son within the community. Haul him out to the town center and be like, hey, everybody, let me tell you what this idiot son of mine said to me. We're all going to publicly shame him and remind him who he is in the place of our community. There's provision in the Old Testament to publicly discipline your son. But notice what the father does in this story. Hey, Dad, I want my inheritance now. You're dead to me. Verse 12. So he divided his property between them. I mean, he actually gives his son his inheritance. He grants his request. See, what's so shocking about this story right from the get-go is not only the son's request, hey, Dad, I wish you were dead so I could have your money, but it's that the dad actually grants the son's request. Now, there's two misconceptions, I think, that people often bring to conversations about faith in God. And one of those misconceptions is that God is trying to control people. Like he's out to control people. He wants people to fit into a specific box. He doesn't want them outside of that box. And the box is religion. Religion is the way that God controls people to fit them into this box so that they will do what he wants them to do. Now, we live in a culture that highly values autonomy. And when someone puts constraints on us, or expectations on us, sometimes naturally, even if they're reasonable constraints or expectations, we just push back on them because we can. Because that's who we are. We're good, strong-willed, independent, autonomous Americans. And I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Anybody who's raised teenagers has seen this front and center, right? Hey, would you go clean your room? You can't tell me what to do. Oh, really? You can't tell me what to wear. You can't tell me that I have to be home by 10 p.m. Stop trying to control my life. It's my life after all. Any parents ever heard that before? I feel like I'm hearing that on a weekly basis in my home, right? We just assume that we can do what we want. Now, the father in this story obviously is supposed to represent God, and it highlights that he's not looking to control anybody. I mean, he was just wished dead by his son, and he grants the request for money. God is not trying to force people to be in a relationship with him if they're not interested to be in a relationship with him. He's not trying to coerce people. He's not trying to manipulate people. He's here inviting people. But he's giving you the dignity and respect of being human to make that choice without having to force you into it. He gives you the ability to choose. Now, the other misconception that people often bring to this idea of faith and religion and conversations about God is not only a misconception about God that he's trying to control people, it's also a misconception about freedom. Again, we define freedom as I do what I want. We define freedom as I have no restrictions on my life. There's no boundaries. I can go and do and be whatever I want, wherever I want, however I want. But anybody who has actually lived that way for a certain season of life knows that just going and doing what you want all the time, just following that impulse, if I want that, I'm going to do that, can actually lead you to down a path of destruction. And that's exactly where this younger son is headed. So the father grants his request, gives him his share of the inheritance early, and this is what happens in verse 13. Not long after that, the younger son got together all that he had and set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After that, he spent everything. There was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his field to feed pigs. And he longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. See, we tend to think that freedom is I do what I want, whenever I want, however I want. But in the scriptures, freedom isn't like go do what you want. Freedom in the scriptures is submitting to the design that God has for you. And I think one of the best examples of this is a fish. If a fish is submitting to its design, because what is a fish designed for? It's designed for water. When it submits to water, there's a natural boundary there with the fish in water. If it crosses that boundary and it jumps out of the water, what happens to the fish? It dies. But when it submits to the boundary, when it submits to its design, it has this freedom to be who it was created to be, to cut beautifully in the water and mesmerize people with the way that it moves. See, you were created to be in a relationship with God. You were created for God to be your heavenly Father. You were created to have this intimate relationship with Him, and the question is, are you pushing against that? Are you running from that? Or are you submitting to it? And sometimes it takes us hitting rock bottom to realize, yeah, maybe this isn't the way that I want to live. Sometimes the reverse is also true. We achieve great success thinking, hey, once I've achieved that success, all of my wildest dreams will come true, but you get to the top of the mountain only to realize there's nothing there, and I need to go climb another mountain to prove something to somebody all over again. And where we find ourselves in this story with this younger son, he's not at the top, but he has hit rock bottom, longing to eat what pigs are eating. And here's where he is in verse 17. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. And he got up and went to his father. He hits rock bottom and he's like, do I really want to live this way? And he decides to go home. And you can tell from his self-reflection, and you can tell from his prepared speech, that what he's expecting when he comes home is condemnation from his father. I always imagine this son traveling whatever distance he has to travel to go home, rehearsing that speech in his head every step of the way. Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm not worthy to be called your son. Just make me like one of your hired servants. Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Just make me like one of your hired servants. Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Just make me like one of your hired servants. He wants to get it right, and he's bracing himself for the, I told you so. I knew you'd come groveling back, and you'd want back in. You'll be lucky if I say yes to you being a servant. That's what he's expecting. But when he gets home, what he finds is not only is his father not trying to control him, his father is full of compassion. Because this is what happens as he travels home. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. And he ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. What I love about this story is that it gives the perception that the father is on watch. When he saw him at a distance, kind of paints this picture that maybe in the evenings after the day is done, he sits out on the front porch and he just watches the horizon, hoping that there will be a day that his son crosses back over it. As he walks to and from the property, he's just always glancing to the distance. Maybe today is the day. Maybe my son will come home today. And then when that day finally arrives, he gives no hesitation in his response. Sprints towards his son, throws his arms around him, kisses him. I imagine just weeping with joy that my son has returned. And it's good for us to know that God is watching us too. Not with like that, I'm going to get you. But he watches and waits, longing, hoping for our return, so that he can respond to us in the same way that he responds to this son. Now, what's really interesting, I love the description that he is full of compassion. The Greek word here for compassion is the word splachnizomai. It's one of my favorite Greek words, in part because it sounds like you've got something in your throat, splachnizomai. But that's the verb form of this word. Here's what I really like about this word. The noun form of this word is splachnan, and it means bowels or intestines. If you're in 6th grade, you're loving that right now. You're like, if you're a 6th grade boy, you're like, that is so cool. But it raises a question like, how in the world do you go from bowels and intestines to compassion? Like, that's a huge jump in meaning, right? To go from a verb form to a noun form and it be that different. Well, in ancient Jewish culture, feelings were thought to reside in your stomach. We say that feelings reside in your heart. You're like, oh, my heart breaks for you. Oh, my heart goes out to you. But in ancient Jewish culture, feelings resided in your gut, the deepest part of you. Have you ever experienced something or saw something really sad and you're like, oh, it made my stomach hurt. It made my stomach turn, right? My stomach was just, turned over. I was sick to my stomach when I saw that. You weren't actually sick, but you're trying to describe the emotional reaction you had to something. So in ancient Jewish culture, feelings resided in the gut, which means when the father watches his son leave, he probably was sick to his stomach. But then when he sees him come home over the horizon, he probably gets butterflies. And he gets that nervous feeling of when you see somebody you love and you're giddy inside and you feel it in your stomach. That's probably what he feels. And he's full of compassion for his son. He's so excited that he doesn't even let his son finish his prepared speech. Verse 21, the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. What's supposed to come next? Just make me like one of your hired servants. He doesn't even let him finish. Instead, he calls to his servants, verse 22, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate all night long. Pulls out all the stops, invites the whole town, brings everybody around. My son was dead and is back again. This son wished his father dead, took all his money, ran away, and blew it and squandered it in wild living. And the people who are listening to this story might be thinking some of the same things you're thinking. Like, that's not fair. Like, that's not right. Like, how is he going to learn anything? Where are the consequences for this kid? And that's the whole point of this story. That the father is extraordinarily gracious and compassionate and loving. See, this story is often known as the story of the prodigal son. And when we hear the word prodigal, what we think of is rebellious. This is a story of a rebellious son. But the word prodigal actually means wasteful, reckless, and extravagant, which does describe the son's behavior. He is reckless, he is wasteful with his inheritance, he is extravagant, but you could also say the same thing about the father with his grace, mercy, and love. The story could be titled The Prodigal Father because he is wasteful, as it maybe seems. He is reckless with his grace. He is extravagant with his love. And the point of this story is that the Father's love challenges ours. His love is so strong, so great, so mighty. His love challenges ours. In part, what is it that we love that's maybe something that we love more than God, that has taken the place of God in our life? And what God's love does is it challenges our own love. Because here's what you see in this story. You see that this father is not controlling. He's full of compassion, but he's also a confrontational father, because you see this next in the story. Because there's two sons, remember? There's the younger son and then there's the older son. Verse 25. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. And when he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him, hey, what's going on? Your brother has come home, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. And you would think, oh, maybe the older brother's like, yay, my brother's back. Nope, verse 28, the older brother became angry and refused to go in. Now again, many people read this story, and they're, me included, sympathetic to the older brother. I mean, he's the responsible one. He stayed home. He's investing his inheritance wisely. He's being responsible and disciplined. People are like sympathetic towards him. But the Father's love challenges not only what is it that we love more than God, but it also challenges us to say, are we stingy? Do we withhold? Do we have assumptions about how it's appropriate to love people? And what is our system of righteousness upon which we judge people? Is it the same as God's, or not? Now, this idea of saying that God is confrontational sounds like God's aggressive in his confrontation, but notice the posture of the father as he goes out to the older son. Verse 28. So his father went out, because remember, the older son's like, I'm not going in. And he pleaded with him. He's begging him. Now, we don't know exactly what he says in this moment. We will get words from the father in a minute. But the older brother just can't take it. He's like, no way. Verse 29. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him? Like, how dare you? Again, the Father's love challenges our love. Challenges whether or not we withhold, we're stingy. We have a system of righteousness that we put on people that they have to fit into before we will actually love them. And challenges whether or not we love other things, like this perceived idea of freedom or whatever, more than we love God. But the Father's love is also an invitational love because it invites us in. Because that's how the story ends. Verse 31, my son, the father said, you are always with me and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And that's where the story ends. Meaning it ends as a cliffhanger. Like, we don't know what the older brother does. We don't know if he goes into the party and starts to celebrate, if he has a change of heart. And I think it's left that way because it's an invitation to us as well. Like, are we willing? Because maybe you identify with the younger son. You're like, yep, that would have been me. I would have gone to my father, wished him dead, took his money, and ran and had a good time. Or maybe you identify with the older brother. Like, I was the responsible one. I never got in trouble. I never had a rebellious streak. And what you find is that the Father's love reaches both and connects with both and has an invitation to both. And sometimes it's the people who know their life is a mess who are the ones who are quick to respond to the Father's love. Because for us who have it all together, it's like, why do I need God? I got it all together. I'm good over here. I've done what I've needed to do. I've earned my keep. Not realizing that God's grace is just as much needed in our life as it is in somebody who hits rock bottom. And what I love about this story is that you see three things from the Father. Not only is he not controlling, he's full of compassion, and he is somewhat confrontational. You also see that the Father is present, he's patient, and he's pursuant. He goes out to both sons. He doesn't wait for the younger son to reach the porch. He goes to him. The other son who's throwing a fit in the field and won't go inside, he goes out to him. He's present. He's patient with his sons, and he's pursuant. And maybe you're here this morning, and you're reflecting on the relationship that you have with your father. Maybe you had, maybe your father's no longer here. And you're like, man, I wish I would have had a dad like that. And the good news of the gospel is you do. It may not be an earthly father, and we may not be able to repair the relationship you did have with your earthly father, But you do have a Father in heaven who loves you more than you could ever know, to the point that he's pursuant of you through sending Jesus to step into our brokenness, to step into our mess, to go out and meet you on the distance of the horizon, to throw his arms around you and say, welcome home. I'm so glad that you're here. Jesus comes as a revelation of who God is, as a revelation of the Father's love, mercy, and grace for you, to say, please come in. Please accept my love. Please rest in it, because it is the thing that your heart desires. It is the thing that you long for. And when you take hold of that, you will find that everything else in this world pales in comparison, and you will understand, this is what I was created for. This is who I was meant to be, a child of the King of Kings over all creation, a son or a daughter of the King who holds all things together. And as I rest in that, I receive my true identity. I rest in his love, and I become the person he has called me to be. So may you know, and may you see, that you have a Father who is full of grace and compassion. May you know that he is present with you even in the hardest places of life. And may you know he sees you, he's watching, he's waiting for you to come home so that he can wrap his arms around you and say, I love you. You are mine. Lord, I pray that we this morning would be able to rest in the love that you have for us. We thank you so much that you have come to us, and that you have chosen us more than we have chosen you. And I pray that we would be overwhelmed and overcome by the love that you have, and that we might be people who respond to that love in a way we go out into the world and communicate it to others, both in the way that we live, but also in what we say. So, Lord, give us eyes to see, give us ears to hear, and give us a heart that is willing to receive and respond. Amen.